Happy Tuesday. You're going to hear a little breathing from Max. We're doing great. So this is a really, really, really wonderful example of how valuable it is to do some self-inquiry, some introspection, and ask questions about, how did I come up with that story? How did I come up with that perspective, that interpretation? Is that mine, or was that implied from somebody else? Did I take that on without actually checking in to see if that's resonant for me, or that's my truth, or that really matches my authenticity? So I'll give you context, because many of you that are watching this probably are familiar with Abraham Hicks, who's one of my teachers. And I was very skeptical of Abraham Hicks because it was channeled, and at the time I was as open-minded and as aligned as I am now. And so there was a lot of skepticism about really discerning about the information and the books that I was reading. And I was so hungry to learn about our thoughts create our reality, and quantum mechanics, and metaphysics, and spirituality. And so I was reading everything. And some of the stuff that I was reading, it was the channeled stuff. It wasn't something about it. There was fear about it, and eventually I just, wisdom came through, and it was well, who cares about the messenger? If the message is valuable, and if you apply it and it works for you, then so what? Who cares where it comes from? And of course that's the case. And one of my acts of kindness is that when I have a little spare time in between calls or whatever, is I'll go and find I'll go to some Abraham Hicks groups or some other groups, and if I feel inspired or intuitive or nudged to help, share or support somebody, then I will. And so I did that recently with a person that reached out, and she was having a big challenge on a specific subject. And the general things that Abraham would say to do, they weren't working. So focus on the positive aspects, or find another subject that you do feel good and focus there. And it really wasn't working for her. And I so got that. And about 40 other people, including the moderators, all basically said the same thing. Stop focusing there. Deny that. Focus on the positive. Find something else. Get happy. And she responded and said, I've really tried that, and it is not working. It's just not working. And so she's like, I feel like I need to write a letter just to get it out. And I supported her in that. And I said, your intuition is right. You need to listen to yourself. And I said, but not that you need this validation of what feels better for you, because intuitively she knew that was going to make her feel better. And I wanted to praise her for that, and reinforce her for that, because we all need to listen to our intuition. Not everybody, Abraham isn't the path for everybody. In fact, I have so many teachers and so many, I love, everything. It's like a puzzle. You take what works from here and what works from there, and you make it work for you in the way that it does. But you don't have to, it's not there isn't a one all be all. Let's just say that. So I wanted also to validate that because she was responding in Abraham, I wanted to honor that she is in line with the teachings, but also that it supports that they have 100% said. I find this really fascinating, because I noticed that a lot of people that have been following Abraham for a long time, it just right over their head. But why I love this though is because it just goes to show you how unique and personal our own realities and our interpretation of things are. Because doesn't matter what someone says, if you're not on the same vibration, you cannot hear it. You cannot hear it. And so it's so cool to me, because it just goes to show you that you can never know what another person is living or feeling or experiencing, because you could be in the same environment, listening or watching and hearing the same things. The way you interpret them is completely different based upon your upbringing, your values, your belief systems, again, the meaning and stories that you give things. So I just shared with her, and I said, listen to your intuition first and foremost. But secondly, here are the things that support what you're saying, that Abraham has said. Number one, if you have a subject that you're giving a lot of airtime to, and because your vibration is where you last left it on every subject, it is worth cleaning up. It is worth cleaning up, because it's got so much airtime and so much momentum behind it that you literally can't. And people, they relate to this. Everybody relates to that. So when you are in a funk, it's going to take quite a bit of a lot of really good music or whatever, right? Like, it's just not one thing. It's and then it doesn't matter because it still creeps up. Like, you can listen to a happy song and it'll change your mood for a little while, but that subject will come back around and you're going to still be feeling the same way about it. They have also said, like, well, how about this? This is the funniest one. 99% of what they do in the hot seat is they hand hold for people how to clean up their vibration on the subject. So 99% of people come in the hot seat with a subject, whether it's a challenge or they have a problem, and they literally walk them through cleaning up their vibration on it. So it just goes to show you that people are so, like, stuck in their stories and their interpretations that they're not willing to actually take it for what it's worth and decide themselves what the interpretation means. So it's like they have this implied overarching theme that they've taken on, and it's like they can't hear anything else. And I just say this as an example because I think we're all doing that in many different ways, and it's so helpful to ask ourselves those questions. Like, wait a minute, am I taking on an implied or assumed meaning, or like, how do I actually feel about this? What's my interpretation, and how did I come up with that interpretation? Is that really authentically mine from what resonates for me? What, what's the stories and the definitions and the values that are benefiting me? Or have I decided to make it mean something else because of somebody else's definition and value and attributes? There's so many things that if we could just actually be authentic with what is it that really means for me and why, man, you not only will you clean up your vibration so fast by just asking the question because a lot of times we don't even realize that we have taken on assumptions and judgments and implied meanings without actually taking the time to investigate with ourselves. Like, does that resonate for me? Does that actually work for me? Do I really believe that? Does that meaning resonate? Does it align with me? Is that actually how I feel? Like, where did that come from? So needless to say, there's a lot of backlash until it's like, okay, well, here are the quotes. You can't take, this is what was said, and how you interpret it and what you make it mean is completely up to you. But I try my best to stay neutral and observe it from a neutral perspective and really take on, like, okay, what are there are more than one ways to interpret everything, at least two sides of every coin, right? So if you can, my nose is just, I'm going to sneeze. If you can look at, like, taking on just like a sweater, you're trying it on to see what fits. And if you can just try on different perspectives and say, okay, what about this interpretation? What about this interpretation? There was another great example lately where there was this guy who was like a really hardcore flat earther, and he had like several 100,000 followers that were like backing him up, like, yep, we believe you. And someone invited him. It was like a $30,000 flight. You're probably going to know who I'm talking about in a second. I forget his name, but invited him on a $30,000 flight to Antarctica to be able to undeniably distinguish, because of the 24-hour sun, that there's no way that it could be a flat, right? And he said, I'm wrong. I was wrong. I admit it. Until I saw it differently, and so until I had a different perspective, I was so certain of that interpretation from other facts, other assumptions, other whatever evidence. I'm not saying either or. I'm saying I think that every reality you can imagine exists. So it's really up to you which one you want to line up with. And at the core, I think there are foundational truths, but I also know that, even if you're buying into a lie, it's serving you in some way. It's helping you in some way. So regardless, I love the idea that, for me, it's like, I love the idea of being completely curious and, like, so open to learning and changing my perspective, changing, like, what I knew before, finding new meanings in things. And man, do I love it when nature comes up with, like, oh, we just identified a new species, or, oh, there was a species that we thought went extinct, so long ago that's just like shown up again. Like, that stuff just makes my heart so happy, because it just reinforces the idea that it's all a fun holographic nature, where everything that's in the tiniest part also contains the whole And so with that, we can dream to have the like most amazing discoveries and adventures and new possibilities. And so I encourage you to stretch your mind when it comes to things like this, to stretch your mind with your definitions, your assumptions, and your interpretations, because how much are you limiting yourself? How much are you missing because you're stuck on one interpretation? How much are you putting yourself into a box with a label when there's so many other shapes and sizes that are available, that you can move through and change different vehicles all the time? So I hope that was helpful, and I love you so much.